Free agency is far from over, but what's that? Cooper Kupp? Aaron Rodgers. Oh yeah, it's getting weird. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate my hashtag everydayers so very much. Y'all make this thing go round. And welcome in a lot of new people this week. Of course, it's free agency. Love you all the same. Let's dive in. There's so much to talk about today. There's a lot of updates. Harrison Smith is back. They signed a couple other people. Javon Hargrave officially signed, so that's all squared away. A couple of rumors, and a cap update from my good friend, Matt Freese. He does the Kindred Skulls podcast, and he's been tracking this like to the cent. So I brought him on the show. He'll be on at the end to give us a salary cap update with some guesses at the contract details that we don't have yet. And then obviously we can kind of update that once we find out. But let's start with what I started with. So there are two names that I think we're watching right now for the Vikings. They're not done by any stretch of the imagination. There's still definitely some cap space. I would say it's more going to be about like 1-year deals based on what Matt told me, which we'll get to the end, but that the like money in the future is a little bit more scarce right now than money right now. So I'm going to guess that there are more 1-year deals coming, kind of like what the Vikings did with Harrison Smith's deal. I'll talk about that in a sec, but here's where we're at. So Cooper Kupp released officially. The league year finally turns over on Wednesday. So all this stuff can be official. Everybody can put pen to paper. They can start flying to their facilities and taking their pictures. So you're going to see a whole bunch of that come out of the Vikings social team in the next couple days, all very fun. But that also means that these releases finally happen. Cooper Kupp officially released, thank you, LA, heartfelt messages, the whole deal. And Minnesota, very much a possibility, according to several members of the local beat and the national beat, but there are a lot of teams in on Cooper Kupp. He's a little bit the belle of the ball right now. I don't think he's going to be insanely expensive because of the way that his career has gone the last couple of years, but a lot of teams are in on him, and the Vikings are one of them, so we'll see, right? You got the Kevin O'Connell connection and all that. A lot of other teams with guys who coached for Cooper Kupp in the past that want Cooper Kupp on the team, so we'll see where that goes. But that does kind of raise an eyebrow for a lot of, but wait, don't they have Addison and Naylor and of course Jefferson? And it's like, yeah, so like that's my thing about this. If you get a chance to bring a good wide receiver in, I think you just do it. And it never really matters who you already have unless that room is like so turbo stacked that like you would end up cutting somebody that's really good, like in camp because you need to get it down to 53. Like that would be the way. But otherwise, you can always upgrade on Jalen Naylor. And if you don't upgrade on Jalen Naylor, that doesn't mean that you had to upgrade on Jalen Naylor, right? I think too often we get really ultimatumy with it. Like if you can get Kupp in to upgrade on Jalen Naylor, if you even think he is that at this point in his career, which you could totally debate. I'm not going to do that today, but go ham. But if you want to upgrade on Jalen Naylor because you're being opportunistic, that doesn't necessarily like imply that you're unhappy with Jalen Naylor. You just would be happier with Cooper Kupp, which I don't think like, well, maybe you do disagree, but that's fine. Similarly, the rumor mill is trying really hard to link Aaron Rodgers to the Vikings. I don't buy it one bit. So here's the deal. I don't need to spend a lot of time on this because I honestly, it sounds to me, well, it doesn't sound to me. It's been reported very point blank by like Adam Schefter that he's between the Steelers and the Giants. And those are the two teams for Aaron Rodgers. Diana Rossini and Kevin Seifert at ESPN. And I think Mike Silver like winked at this, although I don't really trust Mike Silver. But a lot of people have kind of said some version of like Aaron Rodgers is open to playing in Minnesota. And it's always worded like that. It's always from Aaron Rodgers' perspective. It's always, oh, he would go to Minnesota too if they asked. And hey, he's actually not that. Don't rule out Minnesota. He's not that. That's an interesting idea that he would be into. But it's always his perspective. And Adam Schefter went on TV and like point blank was like, yeah, I don't think Minnesota's in on him. So it sounds to me like Aaron Rodgers is looking at the Giants and the Steelers. One total mess of an organization in New York, and Pittsburgh, which I don't know. Like, I feel like you should just take that, right? Like, you're throwing a DK and George Pickens. They're a serious organization that keeps things stable for you. Like, if that's the option, I don't know what the holdup is. Maybe he's just trying to, soak up the limelight a little bit. We know how he loves to do that, but that feels like where this is headed to me. But as cool as that duo is, it ain't Justin Jefferson. And I think that might be, and everybody wants to come to Minnesota right now. Jonathan Allen didn't even go to other teams. He flew directly to Minnesota to do a visit because he wanted to be here so bad. So I think that's just part of that. But to zoom it way out, boy, is it nice to see Aaron Rodgers, adversary of adversary for more than a decade, go out begging on his knees via Diana Rossini to come to Minnesota, and Minnesota being like, nah, we don't need you. Not going to lie. Feels kind of nice. But that is not, I think, I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm still choosing not to take it seriously because I've kind of been told not to take it seriously. And hey, if the reporting changes, I'll bring it to you when that happens. So we've got a lot still to watch, but some real transactions actually happened. The biggest expenditure was Javon Hargrave, so I'll get to that. There also are a couple of, I'll call them depth players, bottom or rostery players that will, I don't even know if some of these guys will be like on the roster bubble, depending on how, punt gunning goes in preseason. And then, of course, Harrison Smith is back. But there's one thing I haven't talked about yet. And in talking about this Aaron Rodgers thing, we should probably mention. So I haven't mentioned on this show yet that I haven't talked at all about Daniel Jones leaving. It happened like 2 seconds after I got off of a live stream, and then I forgot to do it or last night. So really quick, you probably already know some of this, but I'll give you the lowdown. Daniel Jones was choosing between the Vikings and the Colts. The Colts offered him $14 million, could be up to 17.7, I think, if I'm doing that right off the dome, with incentives. And the Vikings, and he chose that deal, implying that the Vikings didn't match. However, it has now been reported that the Vikings did have a competitive offer for that. And Daniel Jones this is coming from Access Vikings, Ben Gessling, Andrew Kramer, Emily Liker. They said that Daniel Jones, or at least kind of they felt as though Daniel Jones was looking at the two situations where he would be competing. He's either competing with Anthony Richardson or he's competing with JJ McCarthy, and he picked the one he thought he had a better chance in. And that's not, I don't think, an evaluation of Anthony Richardson or JJ McCarthy, because we don't know anything about JJ McCarthy. He's never seen JJ McCarthy throw. He wasn't in Minnesota in the preseason, so he's never seen that before. He's only seen the kid in rehab. I think that's more about the vibes of the team. The vibes in Indianapolis are that they are looking for an excuse to move on from Anthony Richardson, that they're not happy with him anymore. And, the way last season went, taking himself out on that third down, I think pissed a lot of people off, and, benching him for Joe Flacco. Like, it's bad over there. And Daniel Jones, I think, looks at that and sees opportunity. Here in Minnesota, they are ready to move forward with JJ McCarthy. And Schefter and Rappaport who are very much going to be team mouthpieces on this. Like, they are going to pretty much verbatim say what they're told to say. And they've been told to say, JJ McCarthy's the guy. So if you look at somebody like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, these guys that are they're probably going to want to be the starter, and asking them to come in and be a backup, for one, you're not going to be offering competitive money versus a team that wants them to be a starter is going to offer a money that, justifies that. If you want to offer Aaron Rodgers $3.5 million to come be a backup quarterback, here's your Nick Mullins contract, and he takes that, then I guess. But there's a few deadbolts on that for me. There's a few hurdles before we get to there that make me feel like that kind of thing is realistic. Rather, the Vikings are moving forward with JJ McCarthy. And I am sort of shifting my perspective on how they feel about J.J. McCarthy. I thought they were going to be a little more tempered than this. I thought they were going to bring in Daniel Jones. I kind of thought they would win that, or at least that was like my guess. Or if it wasn't Daniel Jones or it wasn't Sam Darnold, it was going to be somebody of that same tier that could very much be your starter. And those names are starting to dwindle. The names that actually would provide real competition for J.J. McCarthy, unless you want to get one of those old guys and force them into a camp competition, the likes of which they haven't seen since they were rookies, which I just don't see coming, then it is going to be J.J. McCarthy as QB1, and we are now shifting focus to who are the backups. I know Mac Jones just got signed with the 49ers, but we're talking like that tier of guy, like the Carson Wentz's, whoever, guys that are at this point in their career, true bona fide backups. J.J. McCarthy's QB1, that's QB2, and maybe outside of the formal sense of everyone's technically competing for their jobs in camp and never say never way, you're pretty much locking that in. I think that's where we're at. And I really thought it would be more of a 1A, 1B. They're going to split reps. It's going to come down to the preseason kind of thing. I don't know if that's true anymore. I don't know if we're even going to ask a preseason to make this decision. I think they just roll in with J.J. McCarthy as QB1, surround him, bolster the trenches, surround him with pass catchers, get Brian Flores on defense and see where this thing takes you. Welcome to the window. We're in it. And that is fueled by a whole bunch of additions. And it also is worth looking at the cap. So we still got a ton of stuff to get into next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Monarch Money. If you've ever checked your bank account and wondered like, oh my God, where did all my money go? Hey, look, I know of a couple of football teams that maybe has happened to this week. But that is where Monarch Money can come in. It's your personal CFO. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. It's not about managing your money so much as it is about building that money into wealth. They have a whole bunch of insights that can help give you feedback on how you're spending, how you're living, how you are budgeting, that can help you save a penny here and there. But it's also got a lot of features that are supposed to be all in one. So it's like your one-stop shop for checking your finances, tracking spending, planning long-term goals, and tracking even shared personal accounts, and everybody can stay on the same page if you, say, have a joint account with somebody, something a lot of people do. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, we got to rapid fire a whole bunch of things. And honestly, maybe I should have made the headline that Harrison Smith returns. We finally get an answer there. He is coming back for an age 36 season. He's going to make like $10 million in base. It can get into more with personal and team incentives. But that is the baseline there. So the safety room right now, as it is, replaces Cam Bynum with Theo Jackson. You just let a guy walk, you promote the guy next to him. That's not an unheard of thing. It's not a thing that it's not the plan that I think any of us anticipate or hope for. Usually you want to go one for one. You lose a guy, you gain a guy. But if Cam Bynum's going to walk and get added to the comp formula, go make a bunch of money with the Colts, and they like Theo Jackson enough, and they clearly have loved Theo Jackson since he got here in 2022, they'll have him roll as the third safety, and you have Josh Metellus and Harrison Smith on the field every play. There are concerns that I have with this. Harrison Smith at age 36, I have been kind of I've been talking for years about, is this the year Harrison Smith is on a pitch count? Is this the year that maybe he doesn't play 100% of the snaps? Because when you get older, fatigue sets in. Is he going to be the best version of himself in the fourth quarter? I don't think that, I would have absolutely anticipated that happened last year, and I don't think it did. So I'll put my faith in it. I think I've learned my lesson is to not be too early to this prediction. I've already been too early to that prediction by years, but it is absolutely something that I think we all get to still be concerned about. We maybe shouldn't make a prediction one way or another, because how the heck do we know what's going on in Harrison Smith's body? But also, is Theo Jackson going to be an every down player? Do we trust that? Theo Jackson made mistakes when he got in games like end of the Texans game when all the twos were in, or if he was just coming in because somebody had to, take a minute to get their ankle taped or whatever. He did make mistakes in the secondary. And so if we have a whole season of that, is that going to be a concern? And then also with Josh Metellus as the third safety was beautiful because you could put him anywhere. If he's the second safety or even the first safety, is that going to pin him into a specific role? Or are we just going to have Theo Jackson play the Cam Bynum role, try to run back what we did in the safety room last year? In theory, I love how that purports to work, but will it work? There are question marks. And so I would love to add one more serious safety to that room. There is a D-back that they added, Trevier Thomas. I think he's, from what I understand, supposed to be more of a special teamer type guy, more of a depth type guy, which they also needed to replace Theo Jackson, I guess, as the kind of bottom roster special teams guy. So there's that. They also brought in Leroy Watson, a tackle. I missed that. That happened, I think, on Tuesday. So he's like a backup tackle, maybe kind of a been on and off rosters type of guy. He's at like practice squads for like 3 years, and he's been on like 5 different teams. So that's somebody. But Javon Hargrave, also officially a Viking. It was reported on Tuesday morning that the Vikings were going to do this, but he was kind of like Cooper Kupp. He was going to be cut right when the league year turned over. And that was like the expectation. And so he was given permission to talk to other teams and to kind of do the legal tampering thing as though he were a real free agent. The Vikings ended up coming to a deal or agreeing to terms with him, but you couldn't officialize anything. You couldn't announce anything until he was actually cut from the 49ers. He was cut from the 49ers, and within 4 seconds, he had officially made him official. We're doing great with the Vikings. 2 years, $30 million. 15 a year. So here's what we don't have. We don't have contract details on Javon Hargrave, on Will Fries, or on Ryan Kelly. We still don't have those contract details. However, I have a buddy, Matt Freese. You might listen to his show in addition to my show. I love it. I'm a listener to Kindred Skulls. And he has this ridiculous like spreadsheet that he sent me that is tracking everything the Vikings are doing, like to the dollar, to the cent. And so he had, and what that did is, depending on the structures of the contracts that we saw, that we haven't seen yet, the Vikings might be running out of money, not this year, but for next year. I'll let Matt explain it to you next on Locked on Vikings. Today's Locked on Vikings episode is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. It's bracket season. It's March, and that means March is mad. The madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you a chance to get in on the action. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That means if you go sign up at FanDuel.com and you win any $5 bet, that even means you're just taking a money line of a 1 seed to beat a 16 seed. As long as it happens, just good to take the UConn women, okay, to beat a 16 seed. That'll happen. And as long as that happens, as long as we don't see an insane upset, you will get $200 in bonus bets. You can get 40-1 odds on UConn winning in the first round. How about that? Whether you're doing that, you're picking favorites to win, or you're picking favorites to win and cover a spread, or you're picking some 12 seed to upset a 5, or Cinderella stories, or whatever it is, the FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. All right, let's move on here with the Locked on Vikings podcast. No sense beating around the bush. All right, Matt Freese is here, and he's got cap information. So here is that conversation. All right, everybody, here with Matt Freese, not said like Fries, like Will. This is the first thing, okay? First thing that we need to do. It's Will Fries, and you are Matt Freese. Am I correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. I went back and looked up a 2022 Sunday Night Football game where Will pronounced it himself just to double check, and he did say fries. So
it's fries. Okay. He's like French fry. You are Freeze, the way you said to me, like fleece, but with an R.
Yep, absolutely. It's kind of like a German pronunciation, I guess. I don't.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. So Matt, you are the main ringleader pretty much of Kindred Skulls, the driving force of Kindred Skulls, Good Vikings podcast. I'm an every show listener.
Excellent.
And you have you have been tracking the Vikings cap stuff in a way and using a little bit of guessing and a little bit of kind of like educated filling in of some blanks, made an interesting discovery on the Vikings cap space, not for 2025, but for 2026. So I would love for you to tell me about your process and the results you got there.
Yeah, so I'm kind of ripping off what a site like Over the Cap does, and I use Over the Cap for basically all of my cap stuff. But because, you know, they have a ton of other things to update because they do their own thing, and also because I kind of did this as like a precursor to I made this sheet to like do a mock free agency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which isn't something you can do. And I figured I'd just keep it as we go through free agency to try to see the cap impacts in future years. And I think
Yeah.
there's also something that Over the Cap doesn't include, which is logical for them to not include because it doesn't really impact your cap until the season starts. But your cap changes when the season starts because all of a sudden you go from the top 51 players to
Yeah.
having 53 players and having to pay salaries for all your practice squad players. So like
Right.
as
So
a
random guys like Bubba Bolden or the special teamer D-back they just signed will probably not count against the cap as it is shown right now because they won't be one of the 51 most expensive contracts. But if those guys make the team, then all the contracts count and you'll have to like reconfigure that, which is why teams enter camp not having spent all their cap space because that usually makes it go up. Plus practice squad. That's like 16, $500,000 contracts that'll add up to.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good rule of thumb for that is about $10 million, but I figured why not just do the math ourselves? Like we have the ability to do that. The practice squad salaries are set by the CBA, the minimum salaries are set by the CBA. So you can kind of figure all of this stuff out, right? And usually you're going to carry a couple minimum players into the season. So it makes sense to just add on the minimum salary for those two, whether they're UDFAs or whatever, right?
Sure.
So in doing that, I was able to come up with a modified cap space that's a little bit different than the number of effective cap space that you see on Over the Cap. An effective cap space gets you up to 51 players, and it also accounts for your draft picks, right? So I
Right.
did
So that's
take
like how much you actually can spend
yeah.
because Over the Cap knows that everybody's got to set aside a little bit for draft picks. So they're kind of saying, okay, after you do that, you actually have this much, which is why that's the column that we probably want to use if we're like trying to figure out how many guys the Vikings can sign. So to do this, you had to make some guesses at some contract details that as of this recording, we don't have yet. So what were those?
Yeah, so we have the Will Fries contract, which was listed at 5 for 88 million. The Ryan Kelly contract, which is 2 for 18 million. The Javon Hargrave contract, which is 2 for 30 million, based on the reporting. Right? We found out
Yeah.
with Byron Murphy and the Isaiah Rodgers and also Jonathan Allen that the original reporting, those numbers probably aren't good. Like we'll probably save money compared to that
Yeah.
from a cap perspective. But I just kind of did it out. And if you look at the Vikings contracts, they have a pretty common through line this year, right? So when they do a signing, it's a base, it's a base salary, a minimum base salary, right? And then they put in per game roster bonuses and like a workout bonus to get that up to like $2 million. So the base salary changes based on the number of years you've played, but the baseline is we're paying those guys roughly $2 million in salary slash other bonuses this year, whether it's per game roster bonuses or what have you. And
Right.
then we typically give them the rest of their APY in a signing bonus. Right.
Yeah.
And if you look
So
at the
they're still
Byron,
getting a good amount of cash
yeah,
this year, but it's mostly in signing bonus that will then prorate the cap hits across the rest of the years and maybe void years, like if it's Byron Murphy's deal and so on.
yeah. And if you look at Byron Murphy, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Rodgers, Jonathan Allen, they all roughly follow that structure. And then in year two of those deals, they basically add enough salary plus all that other small stuff to bring your total to the average over those 2 years. Or if it's fully guaranteed, in Byron Murphy's case, the fully guaranteed number,
Mhm.
right? So where Javon Hargrave has like $19 million fully guaranteed, right? You're gonna definitely guarantee $4 million in the second year. Well, it's a 2-year deal. I guess we don't really have any guarantees on a longer deal. Um, But like kind of the Byron Murphy example. But uh, the key is, we're still having that high base salary in the second year.
Yeah.
And that's
we'll
right.
probably see those
Go
kinds of
ahead.
guarantees on a Will Fries deal. It's a 5-year deal with a lot of guaranteed money in it.
Yeah.
Like you'll probably see some guarantees pretty far down the line there. That seems like a real commitment to that guy being your guard for forever.
Yeah, I would expect at least the first 2 years full guarantee to that deal. Now, the Vikings don't really give year 3 guarantees. The only players they've done it for are Jefferson and Darisaw, who are top of market players, and it's not a
Yeah,
common
they
thing
might
around the
have
league.
to.
So
What did they guarantee of the Will Fries deal? It was like 30 some, right?
I don't think I've seen a number on it. If you've seen a number, let me know. But I don't think
I
I've
might be
actually
mixing it up with
seen a
something
real
else.
number on that. But anyway, the moral is, like, while we have really low year 1 cap hits for these guys, it's in the $5-6 million range. We're going to have real high year 2 cap hits, anywhere from like $15 million to $20 million, just depending on the total size of the contract, right? And that counts very heavily against our 2026 cap. So in my numbers, if you were to do it, even with the top 51 numbers right now, and again, these are projections, with just the top 51 numbers, right? So that's like the number you'd see if you go to the Vikings over the cap page. They are breaking even against the cap. If you go with my
As in they have $0
yeah,
in 2026, not 25. In 2026, they're working with $0. And you are allowed to go negative for 2026 because it's just a projection. You just have to get back under by, the league year. And we're going to be talking about restructures and stuff. But that's what you're saying, is that we're almost like in debt for 2026 if these next couple contract structures look the same as the rest of them.
And it gets even worse if you if you include all of the things that 2026 number isn't accounting for right now. I ended up at minus 32 million in terms of cap space, which
32 in the red for 26.
Which by my numbers, and over the cap has about 45, but by my numbers, we have about 34 million in functional cap space this year, right? So if you include that rolling over, which all of that rolls over because I'm accounting for that extra 10 million as we get to the season, right? You're at about even in the cap number years between 2025 and 2026.
So, and here's what's going to happen is that number might carry forward once we get all the details, and everyone's going to freak out the second they're like published on like Over the Cap or Spot Track. And then effortlessly with like 2 strokes of a pen, they're going to get out from under it because so much of that cap burden is in salary, whether it's guaranteed or un. All of that is restructurable, movable, tradable, cuttable, lots and lots and lots of ways and options to get rid of that money and make as much as you feel you need for the coming years of free agency. But one thing I noticed about 26 is the Vikings have very few pending free agents that like matter. And that's because that would be the year the 2022 draft class is expiring and none of those guys are playing for the Vikings anymore. So like it's like CJ Ham and like one other guy. So they're not going to have a ton of needs or a ton of guys to replace. So it might be a really quiet year in free agency next year, which is maybe why they're going so hard on next year's money right now. They're trying to kind of get out ahead of it.
Yeah. And if I were the Vikings right now, like I might prefer to put some of the money in the contracts that we haven't seen yet into 2025, just eat into that cap space a little bit because I think generally pushing out cap hits is good because it's a 0% interest loan in a market that inflates.
Cap go up.
Right? The cap always goes up. The number you're paying is the same. So it costs less for you to pay $10 next year than it does this year, right?
Right.
But, there are diminishing returns on rollovers, right? Because if I hoard all this money next year, it doesn't get any more valuable. Or if I hoard all this money this year, it doesn't get any more valuable next year. Right.
It depreciates. It's like keeping money under your mattress in a very inflationary economy. Like eventually that's going to be worth less.
Yeah. So pushing out when you have to spend the money against the cap is a good thing. But if you're saving all this money against the cap, that just gets pushed next year anyway. Right. Yeah. So it kind of cancels out the benefit of pushing it into next year.
Yeah, so, like the amount of cap space they'll be able to create for 2026 will absolutely neutralize this problem. But it is funny to see just how aggressively they're doing that. And I think that does betray a little bit of their plan for the long term in terms of their actual spending, and a little bit of the intention. If we really want to big picture it, let's maximize the JJ McCarthy window, right? You got 3 years before he gets expensive, including this one. So why wait for the 2026 money in 2026? Why not spend the 2026 money now and get lots of players, which is what they're doing. And they're certainly not done. Matt, where can we find your content?
Yeah, so you can find me at, and I say it like Fries Football just so people can spell it, but I guess it's at Freeze Football.
Freeze Football.
I'm
Spelled
on
like
Blue
the guard
Sky
that everyone loves now.
pretty much exclusively. I'll post my stuff to Twitter, but really I don't scroll there at all. You can find the podcast at Kindred Skulls, which I do with Nick Olson, who's at Nick Olson NFL on Twitter. I don't think he has a Blue Sky account. Kindred Skulls also has accounts on both platforms where we put out the episodes. And it's on any podcast platform that you listen to. We put it up on YouTube too. So it's pretty easy to find.
Imagine telling Vikings Reddit in like 2014 where everything would be now. Matt, thank you so much for your time. Let's have a Teddy Bridgewater argument one of these days for old time's sake. We'll talk to you again later.
Awesome. Thanks, Luke.
Obviously, we will keep these things updated. I will keep you abreast of everything that happens as we get more details and more stuff gets reported. And of course, we're still watching lots of free agent situations. I still think the Vikings need to be active, especially in the secondary. So long way to go here, but we're going to keep tracking it here on Locked On Vikings. Love you all very much. And as always, Skull.